Hey folks, James Abrinio coming to you from Abrinio Law, your Northern Virginia personal injury and criminal defense law firm. I want to do a quick video. Unless you're living under a rock, you're probably aware, at least of some sort, that Congress, the United States Congress, is getting ready to vote on and ultimately likely pass Trump's big, beautiful bill. And I did a quick video about this previously. But as we're getting closer to it likely coming into law, becoming law, likely being signed by the president, I'm getting more anxious, and it makes me nervous. And I'm like many of you, I'm probably losing a little more sleep than I would like over something that's happening on the national level, especially when I'm focused so much on Virginia law and policy. Again, I do Virginia criminal defense, Virginia personal injury. So I wanted to do a quick video on why is it that I'm so scared about this bill passing. Why does it matter to me? What the hell do I know? I'm just a plaintiff's attorney here. I'm a criminal defense attorney here in Virginia. And so I figured I'd just give you a few of my thoughts, take it for what it is. Feel free to disagree. But in a democracy, the goal here is that we can have a conversation. Hopefully this is useful, even if you disagree with me. So a couple things about why do I care? Number one, you probably don't know this. I grew up in Southern Virginia, Buchanan County, Grundy, Virginia. That's where I spent my grade school years, all the way up until high school. I went to Grundy High School for a little bit, and then we ended up moving out. While I was living there, my dad was a physician. He worked at Buchanan County Hospital. He also did a lot of different work, but worked with a lot of black lung, worked with a lot of folks in need, and I think he did good work helping those people. And so I think about what a bill like this may do to folks still living there. It's been a while since I've been back, but I'm paying attention best I can on I think the news and things like that. So I'm concerned there. Also, in my job as a personal injury attorney, as a criminal defense attorney, oftentimes I encounter folks in some of the most vulnerable times in their life. Either they've been through a very, very serious accident, and that's affected their ability to live and to work and to be productive members of society, to be them for themselves because of their injuries, or they're facing some type of criminal justice event where they've been charged with a crime or reinvestigated. And just to be clear, the folks that I represent come from all walks of life: rich, poor, white, minority, Republican, Democrat, every type of person I've represented. I used to be a public defender as well. So I've seen how the lack of access to health insurance, to Medicaid, to health care in general can really impact somebody's life, their ability to recover from destabilizing events in their lives, and also from just life events that are always going to affect them under their control or not, whether it's them or a family member, somebody suffering from a physical injury, a mental health issue, drug addiction, those kinds of things. And so whenever I hear about an effort to minimize or draw back health insurance benefits, whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, whether it's somebody thinking, hey, look, I'm going to save some money by getting rid of my health insurance policy, it always makes me very scared. Okay. It always makes me worry about the overall societal impact, but also the impact for that individual and their family. And so I've been hearing a lot about how this bill may in fact limit access to Medicaid or definitely draw it back. I've also seen that there's been pushback and the normal political back and forth. So I figured what I would do is take some time to kind of talk through some of the basics of what I think Medicaid is here in Virginia. Just to be clear, I'm not a Medicaid expert. This is not meant for legal advice. It's really to give you some insights, some anecdotes from informational purposes. I'm going to give you a few resources. Feel free to look up those resources. Feel free to question me. If you've got somebody that's even smarter than me about the subject, have them come on. I'll do a little interview with them. I have no problem with that. The goal here is to have some discussion. And I will also say, from a 1,000-foot view, let's take a step back. not even talking about the subject matter, but my understanding is this bill is approximately 1,900 pages. My understanding is there's been little to no true public debate on the mechanics of it, the verbiage of it, no true hearings, expert testimony, things like that. And I do work, and I try to do my best to work with local representatives here in Virginia with the General Assembly, and not taking credit for credit it's not due. I'm not a mover and shaker. I just try to be somewhat in the know when it comes to trying to pass important statutes here in Virginia. And I've seen efforts to pass bills that are a couple pages long, that there's multiple back and forths, multiple revampings, multiple hearings, and to think that you're going to have a 1,900 page bill with a plethora of subject matter going through this quickly, I think just on the face of it should cause you concern if a body is moving that fast with that much information to work on, whether again you're Democrat or Republican. Just the process of making the sausage, as they like to say, of making the bill with that quick speed. It's just, it concerns me, and I would imagine that anybody that's really paying attention to our government, especially if you're critical of our government, whether again you can be critical of Democrats as well, passing a bill that quickly should cause you concern. But let's kind of focus on why I think it matters here. So what I'm going to do is also hone in on particularly my practice area. So I do a lot of personal injury. Just from a 1,000-foot view when it comes there, the way that Medicaid comes to relevance, let's say you're injured in an accident, let's say you've got a personal injury claim. Here in Virginia, what ends up happening is you get injured in an accident. If you're covered by Medicaid, Medicaid will pay a portion, hopefully a large portion of your medical bills, and then you'll get the treatment you need. Medicaid allows my clients to get access to care, to maximize the chance of becoming 100% whole from recovery from their accident. It also allows them to prove their damages because they're able to see doctors who then can write medical reports, and if we need them to come to testify, they can testify. So it allows them to prove their case. And also, just so you know, in Virginia, and I think this is everywhere, if you get money in an injury case and Medicaid has paid your bills, Medicaid has a right to be reimbursed. So part of what my job is when I'm representing somebody on Medicaid is communicating with Virginia DMAS, the Commonwealth DMAS, Department of Medical Assistance Services, Virginia Medicaid, trying to get them to tell me how much money they are owed and then paying them back. So in a lot of ways, when I'm helping folks, Medicaid ends up not taking a lot out of pocket. I mean, because we end up reimbursing them. And so that's where I come at it from the personal injury side. Now, obviously, if I'm representing somebody on the criminal defense side, particularly folks, indigent folks, particularly when I was a public defender, Medicaid was a way to get them access to care, whether it's mental health treatment, drug and alcohol treatment, other kind of medical care that may have been part of the reason that they found themselves in the criminal justice system. So it's vitally important to have as many folks as possible covered, because in my world, that means better outcomes. And when I'm dealing with folks in my world, they ultimately are folks, neighbors, friends, family that are interacting with you, that we want to encourage and set them best up to become productive members of society, to be reintegrated. If let's say they've served a sentence or they've been in treatment and they've done their time on the criminal side, or again they've suffered a significant injury, and we want them to get the treatment so they can get back to work. So it doesn't just matter to me, but it matters to your friends and neighbors as well. So first question that I think that we need to address is, well, first of all, how do you qualify for Medicaid? So the first thing that I'm going to share with you is a resource that I found from Virginia Department of Medical Assistance Services, Commonwealth of Virginia. So this is Virginia Medicaid. They've done a good job of putting up good resources to help people navigate. But you really qualify one of two ways: either indigency, meaning you're not earning a lot of money, or, and I'm mispronouncing that, or disability or age. So that's two categories. So first, let's talk about covering based upon essentially low income. Here, Medicaid has provided income limits, so you can see exactly what we're talking about here. This is based upon the federal poverty limit. And so a household size of 1, you're able to make up to just under 22,000. Household size of 2, you're able to make up to just under 30,000. And as you can see, you're progressively going up in income allowance that you're able to make to still qualify for Medicaid as the family gets bigger. But let's look at this. A family of 4, that means you have a yearly limit of just under $45,000. That's a monthly income of $3,700, just under $3,700. Think about living in Northern Virginia, okay? And you're making $44,000 as a family with 2 kids. So you're married with 2 kids. That's not a whole lot of money. So the point of Medicaid is, and obviously if you're making less, is to allow those families to have access to care. So you can see the income, you can still make money, but if you're making not a whole lot of money, you can still qualify. And that's the goal, is we want to get people access to care. At least that's what I think my goal would be. And I think that's what I think a vast majority of Virginians and Americans would agree, that it's better to get people coverage. Because what happens if they don't have coverage and they go for treatment? Number one, either the bills don't get paid and then the hospital eats those costs and then shares it with consumers, with other patients, and they chug along there, or in rural communities where there's already hospitals fending off staying open, when you have unpaid medical bills, but also the other tangential cuts that this bill seems to be pushing for, you may end up losing your hospital. And so just be aware of that. Now, the other way you qualify for Medicaid here in Virginia is age or disability. So put that out there. Again, I'll link these in the show notes here. But you can see here, individuals who are 65 or older or have disability or blind. And then I'm not going to get into the details of what disabilities actually qualify, but that's just the second way that you get qualification for Medicaid. Either you don't make enough money or you're disabled. And whether or not you're disabled, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but it sounds like they're increasing, they're going to make their efforts to make qualifying itself even that much more difficult. So anytime you're trying to qualify for being disabled, I think about my injury litigation cases where you have an inclination by folks to say, well, they're not really disabled, they're not really going through it. So yet another way to kick you off or not get you covered. So why am I, so what the next I wanted to kind of address was a few pushbacks that I'm seeing to Medicaid and why it's not a big deal, why people aren't really going to cut off Medicaid. And it seems like the Democrats are just essentially making things up, and there's going to be no real impact here. So first of all, the reality is the bill is going to downsize Medicaid, generally speaking. Okay. One of which ways is they're going to impose work requirements. And so, and let's take a step back. They're also going to require reapplying and requalifying. And I think the statutory language says at least twice a year. So just be aware of that. Number one, just the application process in general. For anybody that's ever worked through government applications, I think that you can understand my concern about whether or not actually being able to qualify in the first place is going to be even more of an uphill battle. That is even amplified when you're looking at who is going to be applying. First of all, disabled folks, which that adds another burden for them. And then folks with limited resources, again, that adds burden to them getting health care. And so I am concerned, just generally speaking, that they're going to essentially paper people to death, meaning they're going to make the ability to actually qualify in general so onerous and so repetitive that folks are going to fall off coverage. And I think that's inevitably going to happen. In fact, I think that's part of the goal here, because my understanding is the bill will give a lot of tax cuts to a lot of people. We can get into the debate about whether or not that's fair or not, but that's not really the purpose of this video. But the reality is they're going to have to save money somewhere. And by imposing these additional requirements on Medicaid, inherently, the goal there is to save money through giving less coverage through Medicaid. So additional requirements just to apply in the first place are concerning. Now, the other big way that they're saying that they're going to do this is they're going to impose work requirements. And for you guys and gals old enough, this kind of harkens back to the 90s, and I can't help but just hear of the tropes of welfare queens and all of the like. Now, I guess they've gotten a little bit, they've changed the tune, and now it's 35-year-old guys living in their mom's basements shouldn't be getting free health care. And so, first of all, and this is an argument I heard on a podcast, Ezra Klein, he's a far left guy, and you probably, if you know him, you probably don't like him if you're not on that side of the aisle. But I would encourage you to take some time, because he had a very insightful guest. And what that guest said was, remember the difference between like other benefits where you're actually getting checks in the mail. Let's say you're getting disability benefits, like literally they're paying you income. Health insurance is a little bit different. You're not actually getting dollars in your pocket. All this means is you get a card, a Medicaid card, and then if you get injured, you can go and get treated. If you have concerns about your weight or diabetes or heart conditions, you have your card and go get treated. The reality is, and if you don't get treated, that means that there's no cost on the system. If you're not using the system's not getting charged. Medicaid is not getting charged. So what is the likelihood that the avatar that they've created, this 35-year-old guy living in his mom's basement, is like overspending on getting treated with Medicaid, that they're going to use the time that they use instead of playing the video games as they're being positioned to be doing whatever they're being claimed to have done. They're going to go to the hospital and get, I guess, primary care checkups. They're going to go and get treated at the ER for flu and COVID. They're going to go get their heart screenings and their diabetes screenings. Do we really think that that's what's going to be happening here? So inherently, this work requirement for the avatar 35-year-old in his mom's basement just is illogical. And again, it's not causing, it's sure, maybe there's some folks that are going to abuse getting health care. But the reality is that trope that they're using just doesn't make a whole lot of logical sense. So who are we looking at then? All right. Who are going to be benefiting from these? Let's talk about the average person working that gets fired from their job and they can't get another job. The reality is people lose their jobs. They lose their jobs for all kinds of reasons. Maybe they're in an area that doesn't have a lot of work. Maybe they live in a rural area. Again, I grew up in Grundy, Virginia. Yes, people have jobs, but people migrate to Northern Virginia for a reason. Buchanan County is a beautiful region. If they had endless jobs, I guarantee you a lot more people would be living there. But if you're in an area and there's other parts of Virginia where there's not a lot of work to do, and so this fills the gap so they can get care. Let's say you have a criminal record. Let's say you got convicted of a felony and you come out and you can't get a job. Let's say you didn't even come out of jail. You just got a felony conviction and you can't find a job. You're not making a ton of money, right? So if the argument that we want people to serve their time to society and then get back to being contributing members of society, if they can't get Medicaid, that's just another hurdle to prevent them from doing that. Folks with drug addiction, alcohol addiction, mental health addiction that don't qualify or haven't went through the steps of qualifying for disability, for coverage under the disability prong of this, of Medicaid, or don't have the family support or the logistical support to do that. I always remind myself, and I tell folks, we're but one moment away from a very different lifestyle. We're from one moment away from being drug addicted, from being mentally ill, from having physical ailments. We're one accident away from having our life devastated. And I think in a lot of ways it's arrogant to just assume that that folks that are on Medicaid should just go get a job. Frankly, I love the work that I do, and I think that most people would tell you they would prefer to have a job that they find meaningful, that they find useful, that they find productive, that gives them confidence. They would love to work. Sure, there are some folks that just don't want to work. I get that. I understand that. But that's with every society. But I think most folks want to work, but for whatever reason, then they're not able to, or they're not able to get as much work as they want. The other thing to think about now, and what got me thinking about this was in the initial version of this bill, there was language in there that prevented states from regulating artificial intelligence. Now, my understanding is they've recently just removed that. The Senate removed that portion from their bill, and we'll see what the House does with it. As we're talking today, it's July 2nd, 2023. I probably should declare that from the beginning. But it got me thinking about, first of all, why was that even there in the first place? Like, why would regulation on AI be in this big, beautiful bill in the first place? We have technology that looks to upend, that seems to be on the cusp of upending our workforce with greater impact than any other impact in modern history. And I'd argue if it is amazing as it's being promised to be, it will be the most impactful technology that changes American society. Jobs, both manual and intellectual, will go away. You even have the CEOs of these companies saying it. I mean, I just saw an article from Salesforce saying that 50% of their employees are no longer being done by employees, but it's being done by AI. You have Bill Gates even saying, look, in 10 years or 20 years, I forgot the exact amount of time, he's saying that that AI will take away the need for humans in like most work and most jobs. And so one of the surprise, and I'm going on a tangent here, but I don't understand how our federal government as well as our local government is not focused on how to deal with AI technology, how to regulate it, how to make sure that it's not going to destroy the workforce, because that is going to be, we're going off a cliff here, but at least in the immediate future, and one of the tangential effects, you should be concerned about, let's say you're working as a software developer, let's say you're working as a website designer, let's say you're working at a research job where AI in the foreseeable future is going to take your job, and you can't get income. Now if this bill passes, you may not have access to Medicaid because you won't be able to meet the work requirements because you can't get enough work. So that's yet another reason I think that folks should be very concerned about this. Now, another thing that I heard is, well, James, because Democrats are pushing this hard, is kids are going to go without coverage. Kids are going to be kicked off care. And I actually went back and I looked at least what's being reported on the language itself. And from my understanding, and I'm going to pull this up really quickly, the bill itself, the proposed, and this is the Senate version, so it's going back to the House now. It's July 2nd. The Senate version accepts the work requirement, exempts from caregivers of dependent children age 14 and below, people with disabilities, people who are pregnant, and several other groups. So again, this here, it would exempt people from the work requirements if they have kids 14 and under. Well, on its face, even the most favorable reading, if you've got a kid 15 or over, I guess we're just pretending that kids 15 to 18 don't matter on the face of it. So that kind of makes me laugh in a sad way. But beyond that, the reality is, if you're still requiring onerous application and reapplication processes, inevitably parents are going to lose coverage, and that means kids are going to lose coverage. There's also other benefits that the bill is going to be taking away, geared specifically towards kids. That you know, you can have technical arguments about what the actual language says. First of all, it's 1,900 pages. I haven't had a chance to digest it. I can't imagine anybody, and I will be clear about this, any elected representative has actually sat down with the language, both Democrat and Republican. But I want to be clear who I believe the onus is on it to be reading it with great detail is the Republican Congress that's passing this, to just pass it in the Senate with a 50-50 vote and brought in J.D. Vance to win the vote. It is on them to know this language, to have really sifted through it, to understand the impact it's going to have, and to really analyze it in every which way. Because, like I said, if this was some 3-page bill going through the Virginia General Assembly, I would expect my legislatures to go back and forth on it, to have hearings on it, and that's not happening here. I think inevitably it is going to limit coverage, and that's the only way that it works. I mean, if you're going to have huge tax cuts that are going to be extended, the only way it works is to save money other places, and Medicaid cuts is clearly where they're going towards. Now, I also wanted to pull up another article. This is from the Centers for American Progress. And I think it just had an interesting quote on here. The Senate version of the reconciliation bill forces parents of children above the ages of 14 to burdensome work reporting requirements as a condition of Medicaid. Previous state experiences with similar policies show that these onerous rules are ineffective at boosting labor force participation, yet are highly effective in stripping otherwise eligible people from their health care coverage. The House bill ultimately included text that exempted parents from work requirements. So Medicaid added this on. And what this article is saying is the stated goal of requiring work requirements for people to qualify for Medicaid shouldn't be that we want to kick people off Medicaid. It should be we want people to get back to the workforce. What this reporting is saying is it's not actually increased people getting to work. All it's done is meant that less people are enrolled in coverage. And so you would think that if a government party, a government body is pushing for an outcome, getting people to work, when that's clearly not working, you would try something else. But here we are. It's the same old. And really, I think the reality is if they're truly being honest, the goal is not to get people to work. The goal is to get people off Medicaid so they can save money and ultimately, regardless of the outcome, ultimately save money to try to minimize the deficits that this bill clearly is going to create for our government. And that way, when the shoe is on the other foot, because ultimately Democrats are going to take over again. When the shoe is on the other foot and Democrats want to pass a bill and want to get things done, the Republicans, mark my word, are going to say, this is going to increase the deficit. You're wasting government money. And they're going to forget about the addition to deficit that this bill will have, just like when it was originally passed in Trump's first term. And all of a sudden they forgot that it added $3 trillion to the deficit. So the last thing I wanted to take a quick look at is, again, I'm from Buchanan County, Virginia, and I thought would be super interesting to see where Medicaid currently is being used. So I tried to do my best to find a good resource. And again, I'll add these to the show notes. The best I could find was Georgetown University School for Public Policy, which had this interesting Medicaid chart. And it's an interactive one. I would recommend you go and look at it. But essentially what it's talking about is if you hover over it, it will tell you the percentage of Medicaid coverage through the county as well as Medicaid coverage through the state. Now, I'm not going to get into the intricacies of county coverage versus state coverage. I don't know what qualifies for county coverage versus through the state. I'm just looking at the overall percentages to look at how often what percentage of people are using Medicaid. And if you look at this, as you might guess, as the color gets darker, that means the higher percentage of folks using Medicaid. So if you notice here, As you get closer to where I grew up at, and this is Buchanan County right here, you've got coverage rates 17.6% state Medicaid, 24.8% of county Medicaid. So what that means is over a quarter of the folks living in Buchanan County are relying on Medicaid benefits. And what is also interesting about this, and again, I'm not trying to make this political, it surprises me that the Republicans are pushing this. This is Trump's. There's no surprise here. This is Trump's big bill. This is his big. If he passes it, he's going to be bragging and running on it. But if you look at this, and I'm oversimplifying, but as you look at this and you look at where the colors are darker, meaning more Medicaid coverage, that's where it becomes more Trump supporters. We're up here, and I'm not going to oversimplify. The middle of Virginia is purple. I'm not going to try to pretend to get in there. But what is undeniable is Northern Virginia is more liberal, more Democrat, anti-Trump, if you want to say that. And as you get to the South and Southwest, it is clearly more conservative, more Trump friendly. And Buchanan County is a perfect example. I know that there's a lot of Trump supporters there. But as you see that, the folks that are benefiting from Medicaid the most end up being the folks that support Trump. And I'm concerned that they're not looking at this bill, or they just don't care, or whatever. I'm not going to pretend to know why, but it just seems odd to me that the folks that are that seem to be okay with this bill, or at least their elected representatives, maybe what's happening is the elected representatives are not truly articulating to them what's actually going on here. And that's my most cynical view and my most concerning view, that if elected representatives aren't pointing out that, hey, I have a lot of constituents on Medicaid and I got to vote against this bill, or even if I'm not in the federal system, if I'm in the state system, or if I'm just a local leader, if I'm not speaking out against it, if I'm not educating my constituents, that to me is it's really, really cynical. It's really concerning, and it's tragic. And I would just encourage you to take a look at this map, okay? And just going down here, it talks about additional information, adult Medicaid coverage range, senior Medicaid coverage range, CHIP, which is children. So if you go to Buchanan County, again, I love Buchanan County. You look at this, look at these numbers that are using Medicaid, and I want to be absolutely clear about when I point the how localities and how they use Medicaid. I have no judgment whatsoever what kind of health insurance you use. I have no judgment whatsoever about whether or not you qualify for a disability or for income or lack thereof. Honestly, if I wish we lived in a world, number one, where everybody just had the money to afford the Cadillac coverage. I wish we lived in a world. I wish I could give you money and you all could go and get it. I have no problems with that. I wish we were all richer. Short of that, I'll be straight honest with you. I think that we should be providing, as a government, both state and federal, coverage to everybody, whether you want to call it Medicare for all or whatever the case may be. I think that as many people as could possibly be covered, that's what we should strive for. Whether it's through private insurance frameworks, or if you're looking at revamping it for Medicare for all system. I don't know enough about the technical side of it. I think that's where I would fall down upon, and whether or not those details that I support. But regardless of how you do it, I think the goal should be to maximize coverage. Number one, because I think it leads to better outcomes for society as a whole. But number two, if you're in public service, what is the goal? What better goal can there be than trying to get people to be able to get to doctors and to get treated? Now, the counter is going to be, well, James, there's limited money in the system. There's only so much we can pay for. And if doctors aren't getting paid, then people, they're going to leave the health insurance system, or there's going to be waiting lines like they have in Canada. First of all, I don't know exactly how the Canadian health system works. I've had clients that have gotten treated, and it seems like they're doing okay. All right. But I do recognize that the United States has some of the best treatment facilities in the world, and I'm very proud of that. But if you're looking at tax cuts versus making sure that people can get access to the best care in the world, if you've got to strive for one of those goals, because you can't make everybody happy, you're never going to make everything perfect. The reality is, politics in general, the reason that there's a lot of arguing and a lot of disagreements is you have very, 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 very complicated problems, and you have folks trying to simplify it to make it very simple so they can say they're an idiot or they're an idiot. But when in reality, what we should be doing is working together in this complex system to try to maximize the benefit. But you've also got a lot of pull from folks that don't want to fix the system. You have very, very wealthy individuals that want tax cuts more than they care about folks from Grundy, Virginia getting care. That's just the reality of it. And you know, you can say what you want to say. You can disagree with me here. I got no real skin in the game as far as ultimately who wins here. We are fortunate enough in my family to be able to afford healthcare. We are fortunate enough in my family that if there are tax cuts that come down the pike, I'm more likely to benefit from them than to suffer from them. Okay. I'm very fortunate. And I'm not trying to pretend it's because I'm some brilliant guy. I'm lucky. I'm lucky that I had parents that cared about educating me. I'm lucky that I had the physical and mental abilities that are not. I'm not Elon Musk here. I'm competent, and I'm lucky to have a family where it's still hard work. And I'm also just lucky. I'm lucky in general that I haven't gotten some physical ailment or gotten some serious accident or gotten caught by law enforcement when we all could easily be convicted of a crime. It just, we happen to not be caught in those certain times. So I don't come at this with arrogance. I'm just saying, if we're going to spend our time, I would hope that the goal would be to help the most vulnerable of our society, the working poor or not working poor, folks that that are just trying to struggle and live a decent life, for what it's worth. So I hope this video has been useful. Maybe it's not. You probably didn't get this far, but I just had to vent. And I wish everybody the best. Feel free to comment if you found this interesting, like and subscribe.